We are going live. The Hangout is on air, is live. All right. Welcome, everybody. And by everybody, I mean Latif, because this is a practice call and there's nobody else around. Latif, thank you for taking some time to join us. By us, I mean me.
Yeah.
So, Latif, I didn't give you a very much heads up on what the conversation would be about. And I appreciate your willingness to jump on this with quite tremendous amount of uncertainty. So the title of the call is Emotions and Culture, Climate Change.
Yeah.
And so my background is dealing with emotions and your background is dealing with climate change. Maybe we just start briefly, give a quick little thing about our backgrounds in it, and then just start talking. So I have a couple questions for you, and then we'll just have a conversation. The whole idea is to have dialogue and not to debate, but not to interview, but to really just talk. I realize I have a lot of these conversations with people one-on-one, and after the conversation, I go, wow, I wish other people could have heard that conversation. So the whole idea is how can we start broadcasting some of these things so other people can if they'd like to tune in. So
yeah, sure.
I could go first if you would prefer that.
Yeah, you could go first, no problem. Yeah.
Okay, so just quick background on myself. I've worked and lived in a lot of different places, and my main focus these days is emotion. So as a white male in the US, it's often taboo to focus on emotion, but what I'm trying to do is take a very interdisciplinary approach. So not just psychology, but linguistics and engineering and game theory economics and religion, and smashing all this stuff together just to see what are the different ways that we can look at emotion and see what effect it has on our lives, our decision making, our relationships, and things like this. And also to build tools. So I've built an app called iFeelio and also started a class called Emotional Self-Defense. So I will pass it over to you, Latif.
So I've been working on climate change in Eastern Africa, and I was working with civil society organizations, trying to bring them together to seek an appropriate response from the government, because a lot of people, especially where I'm from in Tanzania, they're completely dependent on the ecosystem for their livelihoods. And climate change will likely change that. And if their livelihoods are completely dependent on ecosystems, and if there's any disruption there, then there's a big problem. But the country there's so many other priorities, and it's not really responding well to the challenge of climate change. So my goal was to work with civil society organizations to get uh, an appropriate response to this issue in Tanzania. And I've been working in Tanzania and in international conferences trying to lobby for um, the uh, people in poverty in Tanzania who are affected. So yeah, that's pretty much my angle on climate change. But then I also moved to Sweden to study sustainable development with a major focus on climate change. And that's what I graduated, but that's what I'm focusing on. And I plan to continue working on this issue.
Sweet, thank you, Latif. I'm just gonna kick it off because I have a burning question in my head. What are the emotional reasons? What are the things that are holding us back emotionally from actually taking on climate change, in your opinion? Maybe in Tanzania, let's go specific. Like, what's going on in Tanzania? What do people feel when they think about the word climate change, or the phrase?
Well, I mean, first of all, they're confused because for most people, in Swahili, the local language, it does not, it's only now that they have a word for climate change. Before it was just weather. So when you talk of climate change, for them, it's just weather. And people would just tell you, oh, yeah, we see that now, like the dry season is longer. The rains, when they come, they're pretty intense and unpredictable. So there's a lot of confusion that a lot of people don't understand what climate change really is. it's they conflate that with weather, and it's always hard to explain to them, okay, it's much more complex than what you are just experiencing right now. And it's a
Okay.
global thing. You have nothing to do with it.
So you're saying that there's maybe on the people who are there, there's confusion, but what about the people trying to explain it to the people who are there? What do they feel? What's going on for them?
Frustration, like really frustrated. I remember I had to like I was attending this UN conferences on climate change, and my task was to translate what is going on in the like international debates, and
Mm.
package that in a way that uh, like a layman in Tanzania who probably did not even go to school would be able to understand, like what's being talked about, and what are the stakes and why they should care about this issue. So it's tough, like getting the message across. A lot of frustration.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I was realizing, wow, this is becoming more of an interview. Um, so when I think about climate change,
Yeah.
when I think about climate change, I think it's mostly been discussed from a scientific, rational perspective, and people don't
Yeah.
often address what are the emotions underlying why people aren't making decisions to change their lifestyle. So even here in California, I live in California, and in California, there's a drought now,
Yeah.
and there's emergency measures for people to use less water. There's also stuff going on with agriculture and using less water, and just trying to get down to why aren't people changing. It's really hard and really difficult to take a 5 minute shower, take your shower that's 5 minutes less, or use less water, or to not flush the toilet as much. Just they seem like simple things, but they're just really frustrating when you try to compare it to the larger cause, and you look at farms and you go, oh, well, look at all these farms that are using so much water to produce almonds in a basically semi-arid state. Why? That doesn't make any sense. And so there's this frustration that like I have to change my behavior, but other people don't have to change their behavior. I think I can speak for myself. Is that something that's going on for other people as well that you see?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really hard to change, and the reason why you have a lot of uh, companies and a lot of individuals advocating for like technical solutions to the problem is precisely that issue, because nobody really wants to do anything. Like nobody wants to change how they've been living their life. Like so they then just depend on technology to resolve all these problems. Uh, so you would see that maybe, like, I don't want to stop driving, so I would get a maybe an electric car or a hybrid or something like that. But you still want to drive. I mean, maybe the best solution would be more people to use public transportation instead of like having their own cars, because producing the car takes energy, and we
Mm.
know energy, like producing energy emits a lot of pollution, which is what is causing the climate to change. So I, I I mean, people, it's hard to change when you already you feel like everything is convenient, everything is the way that you want it to be, and then all of a sudden like you don't have these modern conveniences anymore. You have to kind of go back in lifestyle. It's just impossible, I guess.
It's almost like what I'm hearing is that even what I said, it's really frustrated. Why do I have to change? They don't have to change. And I think when technology
Yeah.
comes along, it's like,
Mm.
wait, I don't know. I get really excited. I don't have to change, and I can still
Yeah.
make the world a better place. Oh, this is great. I don't have to change anything at all. This is magical.
Exactly. And then after, like, the, I mean, when you have that, then you have this other problem where, like, okay, so I want to continue maybe using a fridge, but then um, I would get like an energy efficient refrigerator,
Hmm.
and uh, instead of just using it maybe a few times, I use it more because I think, okay, it uses less energy. But then more people will do that, and then you just have this, like this chain reaction where you're not really saving anything. So
Ah, so
yeah.
people get so excited that they're helping that they go overboard, and then it
No,
cancels out all the effect that they.
yeah, I mean, I forgot the name. It's like there's an effect where when appliances are more efficient, then people tend to use more of them. Like if I watch TV just like a few hours a day, but it doesn't because I'm worried about my electricity bill, and if I don't have to worry about it, if this appliance is energy efficient, then I could use more, which the end result is not you're not really saving much.
Hmm.
I don't know if yeah.
Well, it's kind of like, at least what pops into my mind is they say in psychology, when you have a larger bowl of chips, then you eat all the chips. If you have a smaller bowl, then you eat all the chips. And really, it's just about
Yeah.
the size of the bowl, or like going to a
Yeah.
buffet, you eat more food because there's more food available, and so you just keep
Yeah.
eating.
Yeah.
It almost seems similar in that respect, where there's. I mean, I'm guilty of that for sure. I'm guilty of it. I don't actually feel guilty about it. That's um, it's that's a tricky problem.
Yeah. Yeah. But how do you resolve something like that? It's like you have to completely change people's behaviors, and we discussed this before. It's really hard to change behavior, and maybe if you've
Where have you found people that have a good relationship with the climate that are really that care about it? So living here in the U.S., I think a lot of our history has been the climate is trying to hurt us, let us destroy, let us control the weather. The weather is out to get us, so we're gonna fix it. We're gonna grow rice in
geoengineer.
states that
Yeah.
don't have any water. We're going to uh, build homes and heat them in places that are really really cold. All these different things. Yeah, like you said, geoengineering. Where do you find places that work more in harmony with nature from your studies or experience?
Uh, I mean, I don't know. I also think that there's a more complicated issue here because, for example, if I say, I mean, I live in Sweden right now, and you would see like a lot of Swedes, a lot of middle class Swedes that would say, okay, I'm gonna try to fly less to, save, like have a lower carbon footprint that way. Like I'm gonna maybe say no to some of my trips. Um, but then you have, for example, like maybe immigrant families, and they would say, "Oh, you know, Swedish people are very environmentally, like they're very environmentally conscious. Like they care about the environment. That's why maybe they want to fly less." But then, and they would say, "Oh, okay, uh, the immigrant family, they're not as environmentally conscious as the middle class, like middle class Swedish." And then so they would feel as if they're not contributing uh, as much as the Swedes because they portrayed this image of being green. So I I think that how uh, we look at uh, like saving the environment, I think it's really relative how you really look at it. People who are cutting trees, maybe to have charcoal, or cutting trees to have firewood to feed their families, are seen as, maybe are polluting, or they're destroying the environment. But somebody who flies is not, and and polluting tons of carbon would not be considered like. And I mean, this person would say, okay, instead of flying maybe 50 times this year, I would cut that in half, which is still bad. But because you're cutting it in half, you're seen as you're doing more to save the environment. So I don't know. I mean, there are many other, like, it's an intersection, a sectionality of issues within that, the issue that you described. I mean, there are layers of other things to be thinking about.
I mean, I'm as you're talking about not flying as much, I am feeling it. It's the same thing that I say. He's like, oh no, I live here in California. I take public transportation. I don't have a car, so therefore I'm saving the world. And I just flew
Yeah,
all over. How many flights did I take over Europe? I don't know how many. I think
I
just
don't know.
one of those
And
flights negated the whole fact that I didn't have a car this year. Just one.
exactly.
Everything
Yeah,
else was
just
extra credit.
exactly. So yeah, there's that problem. And I mean, for me personally, being from a developing country, I get a little agitated when people, say these things. I'm like, we're not doing enough. We need to do more, especially in, the developed world, because that's where the, I mean, people in Africa didn't cause climate change. It's the
What
developed world that. Mm.
what comes up for me,
Mm.
as you were talking earlier, is it seems like what we keep saying, the phrase we keep saying, is to save the environment.
Yeah.
Hidden in there, what I get is that we are losing the environment. It's going to run away. You should be afraid that the environment is going to disappear. Save it before it's gone, which is a
Uh,
very
yeah.
fear-driven fear-driven message. So you think about the movie The Inconvenient Truth. I think that's what it was called, the Al Gore one,
Yeah.
and numerous
Inconvenient.
doomsday films that are coming out, and just we're losing the polar bears, we're losing this, we're losing that.
Mm.
I wonder if it were not a fear-based tactic, but more of like, instead of saving the environment, how do we love the environment? How do we care for the environment? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
How do we
Yeah.
nurture
Yeah.
it? How do we? Because that's more of a relationship instead of, I don't know. For me, that's just popping. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, because uh, the kind of message that you get, I think even the recent book by Naomi Klein, she's a
Mm-hmm.
Canadian climate activist. And I mean, it's still the same thing, like doomsday scenarios, It's like it really takes away agency from people. Like, you don't really feel that you will be able to do anything to, like, okay, this is doomed. We're gonna die, and might as well make peace with it, So I think the message around climate change has been, there's a communication problem where people are uh, made to feel helpless, that they can't really do anything, that the problem is too big for them, for like individual uh, uh, actions to matter, you know? So I don't know. I think we need to frame it differently, like what you said, that we are part of the ecosystem. We're part of this biosphere, and our actions, our individual actions matter. And if we change our minds, if we uh, have the framing of environment as something that's part of us, that's around us, that we are part of it, then we might uh, feel different about uh, the environment, and eventually each action would count to uh, changing the climate, hopefully for the better.
It's it's it reminds me of I forget her name. I think it's Nancy Duarte. She's a
Yeah.
presentation head talking about powerful speeches.
Mm.
And what she says is that a really powerful speech oscillates between saying how crappy the current situation is and how glorious the future is.
Good.
And
Yeah.
what I find missing in many, many, many social movements, so if you put the Black Lives Matter that's going on in the
Yeah.
US, just
Mm.
many in the whole climate change as well, is that it
Mm.
talks about how bad things are, but
Yeah.
it doesn't talk about how good things can be.
Yeah.
And so when I think about the climate change, I think about, yes, losing the polar bears, losing this and that. But what
Hmm.
about talking about the joy that you receive from interacting with nature? What about talking
Yeah.
about going to a national park in Tanzania,
Mm.
right? Going to a national park
Yeah.
and seeing elephants just kind of walking around. Just, whoa, look at the
Hmm.
size of these animals. This is
Yeah.
unreal. And the
Yeah.
sheer awe that you experience as a human,
Yeah.
almost positive awe. So there's the awe that a tsunami has come and wiped out lots and lots of homes and people. But there's also the awe of, look at that butterfly. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I am standing in the middle of a forest and I hear
Hmm.
nothing except birds and insects. I
Yeah.
feel I feel alive. More alive than I feel walking down a street that's littered with concrete. And
Yeah.
so playing into that hopeful, that optimistic, but the positive side of things. I hate the terms positive and
Hmm.
negative, but like the more inspiring sides, rather.
Yeah. Positive and negative. Yeah. I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree. I think if we if there's a way to cultivate that kind of mindset, then I'll be for it. Definitely.
Well, let me start here then. So I'm going to say,
Hmm.
what are some of the frustrating or negative, whatever, side of things that keep you into it? But what are also some of the awe-inspiring things that make you work on what you're working on, Latif? Why do you care about the climate?
For me, it's actually I mean, there are many frustrating things. There's like in the international negotiations, there's tons of like jargons and things that just like you feel as if it will probably take another 20 years for them to resolve, like, because every year there's like a new thing that they're discussing, and it's just endless discussions, and people arguing over a comma, like, on the negotiating text. It's just a lot of things that you feel like, we're trying to save the planet and you're arguing about this little comma here. It's just, it's stupid, I feel. So I'm really frustrated with that. But at the same time, I am encouraged by what goes on in, like, the I would refer to the cliche development term of grassroots level, where people are actually doing something to adapt to their situation. So if uh, if you have crop failure, then maybe you try to cultivate more um, drought resistant strains of crops. You have people trying to uh, cultivate different kind of crops, not the usual kinds that they used to. So there are a lot of things that you see people doing something about this situation, despite of of this global debate where nothing is really getting done, but you see things moving on the ground level, and you wish that they would see this and they would do more to help.
So, okay, so there's some of the negative or positive, it's the two sides of in
Mm.
terms of the overall movement and how people are interacting towards it. maybe I could ask this: what do you love about nature itself? What do you love about plants or animals or water or whatever it may be? Like, what gets you excited? What makes you feel really grateful? All these things.
I I mean, for me, it's like nature is life. Um, so when I when I eat food, for example, when I enjoy a good uh, mango fruit, I feel like okay, you know, this there was a process here that went on to make this uh, fruit, and I I just it gives me so much joy that I'm part of this. Like that, you know, it's not. Uh, these things just don't happen. There's a process. There's a lot of things that are happening, bees pollinating, like there's a lot of different things. So I'm very like detail oriented person, and whenever I think about these things, I just get really drawn to them. Like it's so complex and it's very uh it's complex, and there are so many questions to be asked and to be answered, and for me it's just really exciting. So I I get a lot of joy asking these questions and enjoying the fruit, but at the same time, like being able to have these questions and probably some of the answers. So that gives me a lot of joy. I don't know if it, it's hard for me to explain it, but it's like I always think about things more than what maybe an ordinary person would do. I would look at it and I would think, how did this come to be, you know? And for me, that just gives me a lot of joy. Yeah,
Is it reminds me of going to the Grand Canyon in the U.S. and just standing there and going, "Wow,
yeah,
I wow, wow, how is this? How is this possible?"
yeah,
Um, and
yeah. I
so,
mean, you know, you could also just be standing there and look at, I mean, look at it and say, "Ugh, these are just like a bunch of rocks, you know? It's like there's nothing really interesting." But I mean, there's a way to like soak it in and really be one with this place that you are at, and it would change you. So I
well, Latif, we are coming to the end of our time, and I deeply, deeply appreciate this conversation. It went places I didn't expect, and I have a new perspective on climate change, actually.
yeah.
It's it's not about, for me, it's not about stopping and saving and fighting the fear. It's more
Mm.
about how do we just appreciate nature more?
Mm-hmm.
How do we
Mm-hmm.
just remember how much we appreciate it, how good it
Yeah,
feels
and
to
you
go
know,
to the beach,
and
just sit on the beach and look at the ocean and go, wow, look at the ocean. Look how many animals will be in there. How many plants are in? This is unreal. How it like this is
yeah,
unreal.
and like the fact that we're part of it. You know, it's not like we forget. You know, many times that we're part of nature. We cannot survive if it's hard to survive if the bees die. You know, like we need them to pollinate our food.
This
There's
this makes me want to have another conversation just about how we there's no word for it. It's not dehumanize, but like we
yeah,
remove the life from ourselves.
exactly. Yeah,
Inspire is to breathe life into, maybe expire. We almost expire ourselves. Oh, we're not
yeah.
really part of nature. No, no, we're machines. So we need to build other machines so we can have more machines.
Yeah, we
No.
have it's like you have a human being and everything else. So it's a very anthropocentric view of, you know, seeing the world. Like you see it from a human perspective. You don't see it from like a biodiversity perspective. So yeah,
Like I'm sitting here talking to you on a wooden desk, which came from a tree.
exactly.
And the
So
only reason I can breathe is because of trees.
yeah, yeah, you know,
Oh, wait. So if trees die, I die? Uh-oh.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean, well, yeah, you can, of course. There's a lot of things.
No, but fight nature. Fight our own human nature as well. So, Latif,
Yeah.
this was great, man. If there's anything that you want to say at the end, I give the floor to you, and then we'll wrap up. And
Yeah. I mean, I think I would like to say one thing. This year, in December, the Paris Climate Conference will hopefully conclude a binding climate deal that from the year 2020 will start addressing climate change. Uh, so I think it's a very pivotal moment for the climate movement and for people in general. So I think this is something that maybe if anybody like if there's any person watching, then they should like try to look up, try to follow up what's going on with the Paris conference. I know there are a lot of events leading up to it. There are concerts and like a lot of different things, and it would be great if you participate in one of these and try to get the message across. Yeah.
Latif, this is wonderful. What I would say to any watchers is, any viewers, is if you want to learn more about emotions, your own human nature, or if you want to learn more about climate change, speak with me or Latif. And if you're curious to help push a movement that focuses on why we love nature and why we love the climate, then please contact us. I'd be really curious to have further conversations. So by curious, I mean excited. All
Yeah.
right. Thank
Just
you,
bye.
everyone. Thanks, Latif.
Bye.